Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the final episode of the podcast this season. We're part of the Press Play Podcast Network, and we want to give a special shout out, a special thanks to our sponsors of the season. This is their last time that we get to tell you about these folks until next season. Hopefully, they sponsor us again next year. But let's talk about the Loft at Peck's Hall. The Loft at Peck's Hall is 4,000 square feet venue. And I personally know over this weekend, they finished up a beautiful bathroom remodel up there, and it just is lights out. It is absolutely beautiful. Check out the Loft at Peck's Hall on Facebook. Give them a Google search. It's a beautiful 4,000 square foot, you can't even call this place remodeled because it's restored back to its original beauty. It's just such a beautiful space. It's on the third story of a Circleville downtown. It's absolutely beautiful. Check out the Loft at Peck's Hall and book your next venue today. Weddings, bridal showers, baby showers, pictures, whatever you want to do with 4,000 square feet, you can do it. Check out the Loft at Peck's Hall and book your next venue today.
Hey everyone. Do you ever wonder how those giant construction machines get from place to place? Do you ever think, I wish I had one of those in my backyard. I want to dig a swimming pool. Do you ever think, how do I drive a semi through the mountains? The answer for you is Bella Freights. Bella Freight can get anything you need moved from one place in the country to anywhere else in the country, whether New York to California, Seattle to Florida, anywhere in Ohio you want to go, maybe? I don't know. Bella Freights can get you where you need to be. Check them out. They're online. Check them out on Facebook. They are experts at shipping things from one place to another. Big equipment, small equipment, trucks, trailers, you name it. Whatever you need, move from one place to another. Check them out. Bella Freights. And now, on with the show.
Could be up to the offensive line. No, Prince's going to throw for it. Got to get it off. They go for the ball game. Touchdown! Touchdown! Michael Jenkins! Holy Buckeye! Tebow straight ahead into the end zone, and the Gators have put this one on ice.
Hello, and welcome to the Tim and Shipe Show. This is a college football podcast. We're going to be talking national championships, everything college football, at least everything Ohio State and Florida Gators for the next 45 minutes or so. Might be a quicker episode tonight because we don't have picks against the spread. We don't have some of our other segments to go through, but we do have a national championship to talk about, off-season quarterback competition, coach re-signing, so much going on with the Florida Gators and the Ohio State Buckeyes this offseason. And so let's get to it. But before we do that, let's say a special thank you to the Press Play Podcast Network and our sponsors and everyone who's been involved in this season, getting the Tim and Shipe Show off the ground for our third season. Thank you so much to everyone. And Tim, thanks so much for putting up with me for another season, man. Let's talk Florida Gators offseason, but before we do that, let's talk a national championship game that just happened last night. Obviously not what I expected, more of what you expected. It felt a lot like 2016 when Clemson beat us 31-0, or in 2006 when Florida beat Ohio State. Just complete domination. I don't want to say from start to finish because there's about a quarter and a half there Ohio State was in it. But Ohio State just did not have the right defensive scheme this entire game. And they had – all right, I'm just going to get it out there. I know I pitched it to you to start off, but I just very frustrated that we were playing four linebackers the entire time against the dynamic wide receivers. It's like we didn't even watch Alabama. We had Tough Borland covering the Heisman Trophy winner down the middle. I started screaming and I stormed upstairs when that happened because I was like, this is over. If you have linebackers on a Heisman Trophy winner, you're not going to win. If you try to play Alabama with a 4-4 defense, you're not going to win. Just horribly drawn up defensive scheme, and it cost us everything. So anyway,
Yeah.
Tim, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, I definitely don't want this to sound like I told you so, because it's not the case at all. But I told you last week that Ryan Day is going to have to come up with a new plan to beat Alabama. And it looked to me like he said, what we did worked against Clemson. We're going to try to basically do the same thing. He changed it up a little bit, but in reverse. I don't know. He played a more talented team and seemed to go more almost zone. Am I wrong? Like it didn't seem to me like he was, I don't know. It didn't seem like he was matching up the way I would expect him to against the individual talent that Alabama had.
Well, okay. So I'm going to say the defense isn't, I know that Ryan Day oversees everything, but I don't think he's that involved in the defense. He's got Greg Madison, a seasoned veteran who came over from Michigan, Al Washington, Kerry Combs, who was at the Tennessee Titans. Like, I think he has a lot of trust in his defense, and I don't honestly think he's involved. I put this loss on the defensive coaching staff, the Kerry Combs of the world, and Greg Madison, honestly, their co-defensive coordinators. I put this loss on them big time. Just terrible defensive scheme.
Well, I was thinking more just like the creativity where like
on offense.
I give him the credit for the way they changed things up against Clemson, and they really try to be creative in general, just across the board.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. Like he maybe is more in charge of the offense, but at the end of the day,
the defense they tried to do completely different. We haven't run a 4-4 defense all season. I don't know what we were doing running a 4-4 defense most of the game. And we were running man-to-man for a while, but the way they were sending – did you see how our defensive backs, they were playing about 6 yards off of every wide receiver at the snap of the ball, and when Alabama would send guys in motion, we would be in man, and then they would cut back real quick when they snapped the ball, and our guys would be 12 yards away from them. They could catch the ball and gain another 15 yards. So our man-to-man coverage, the scheme that we had drawn up where it was, and Kirk Herbstreit talked about it a lot on the broadcast, where it was give them yards, they're going to score yards, but we want to hold them to field goals in the red zone. And they couldn't. And then there was zero adjustments at halftime to say, okay, hey, this isn't working. We got to tighten up. We got to play them. If we're going to play man, we got to play on them, bump them at the line, throw them off the routes. But none of that happened. They just kept playing conservative. And, the game was over by third quarter.
And on both sides of the ball, not just on defense. Like, am I crazy, or was Justin Fields throwing 5-yard passes?
Yeah,
what is going on there?
Well, so I think they weren't throwing the ball down the field at all. I think Justin Fields was feeling it, but he was throwing the ball down the field in the second half. So I don't know what that was about. First drive of the game, first play of the game, really, we lose our probably the most trending running back, the hottest running back in the game obviously at that time of the season, and Trey Sermon, and it was just a lot of bad luck. And so if that screen pass to Sermon doesn't get tipped, that's probably going to go for a first down, and then we don't go 3 and out. We went 3 and out, I think, 3 times in the first half and 2 times in the second half, and you just can't do that. Like, it's those little things that, when you go back and look at it, you wish you had back, because it was those little tiny things every now and again that just really put Ohio State back. And losing Trey Sermon, I think, made a bigger deal than what you think, and losing Tyreek Smith, who was playing the best football of his life at this time of year to COVID, really hurt. And Togiai, losing him up the middle, we just weren't getting the pressure on Mac that we were last week against Trevor Lawrence. And so there was just a lot that went against Ohio State. But all that to say, even if we had all those things go right, Ohio State still loses. I'm not saying – the better team won. I slept really good last night because I believed the better team won, when I can't say the same thing about last year's win, where I really strongly believed that Ohio State was the better team and lost. And that was the hardest loss I've ever had to deal with. I'm not feeling too terrible about this year because I honestly believe the better team won this year. And I just think it was just Alabama's year, man. They just had a really spectacular season, and they did great. So we'll put a bookend on this year, and hopefully next year we can get back to a little bit more normal. football.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because I'll be honest, I know I can sometimes be an obnoxious Gator fan, but there are times where I believe Buckeye fans can be the worst fans there are because they just refuse to admit they're wrong. They refuse to admit their team deserve to lose. There are times for me, and I know a lot of Buckeye fans, so I understand it's a pretty big, percentage.
You're painting with a very broad brush, Tim. There are
But I
some
know a
of
lot
us
of Buckeye
out there.
fans. That's what I'm saying. I know a
Yeah.
lot of Buckeye fans, and they're in general compared to other sports fans I know, they tend to be poor losers. They tend to have all the excuses in the world, and you're owning it, and I appreciate that. I think that says a lot about your fanhood. And there are times where you are a very blind Buckeye fan, but the fact that you're acknowledging and I'm with you. Alabama, I think showed they are head and shoulders above everyone else this year. But I just appreciate your being willing to say, we didn't lose because Trey Sermon got hurt. I do think that hurt them a lot. And I understand you're right. It was one of those unfortunate things, but I think at the end of the day, the best team in college football this year was Alabama, period. That's just what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I will say Ohio State's bringing in a 5-star running back as a freshman going into next year, and I really hope he wins the job because I'm not Master Teague is not the guy. There were several times where it was like, go left. I'm screaming at the TV, and he just barrels down and puts his head down and tries to run in.
He did not have a good game.
My goodness, just over and over again. I'm just like, okay, Trey Sermon would have broke that for another 20 yards or, just if you have vision at all and you're not just barreling forward trying to run over people like a train, hey, you're not in high school anymore. You're not the biggest guy on the field. You're not going to be able to just run over defensive linemen like you could in high school. Have vision and hit the holes and don't hit people. It just I'm not a Master Teague fan. I haven't been all season. I thought Master Teague was going to be better than this coming into this year, and just not impressed. Master Teague, you have a sweet name, but you are not a sweet running back.
Well, I think you said a couple months ago, and this isn't to be like, oh, you were wrong. This is to see that you feel the same way. You said that you thought Master Teague coming into next year would be the guy. Do you still feel that way, or do you think that watching him play?
I hope he's not the guy. I hope that this freshman is. So the way I kind of see it, my hope is that this freshman, that it's going to be a Mike Weber, J.K. Dobbins situation where J.K. Dobbins came in as a freshman and automatically started getting splitting carries with Mike Weber, who was a year or two older than him. And so I'm hoping that it's kind of that where they'll split carries and then the other guy will just take over the way J.K. Dobbins did. So that's kind of my hope, but we'll see. Ohio State, we had that our other back. If you saw, we had Steel Chambers in there splitting carries because Mayan Williams was out with COVID as well. Our kickers were out. And again, that can't be excuses because Ohio State hasn't played a lot of games. If these players aren't out because of COVID, we could be missing other players because of injuries that just didn't happen. So I'm not really saying that those are reasons why we lost. It is reasons why we weren't as competitive, but any team is probably running into these things.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, again, like I said, I just appreciate you're not making excuses and just owning it and saying you're okay with it. And I get it. Last year was a weird game against Clemson, and a lot of strange things happened in that game. Some weird calls, some questionable things. I think it was clear this game. So like I said, I appreciate you just being like, you know what, they were better than us. Yeah. And it's hard to say sometimes, but it definitely is true in this case.
Yeah, it's not really hard for me to say because I like I said, I put the loss on the defense. I think with Trey Sermon, I think that we keep up pace a little bit better. I think we get some of those first downs. We don't go 3 and out hardly ever. I don't think if we have Trey Sermon. I think our offense would have kept it really, really competitive, but we still would have lost because our defense was just running around like idiots out there. Just couldn't keep up with Alabama. And Alabama had a great game. They had a lot of guys who were in waiting for this kind of season. A lot of seniors who are just now getting their playing time this year. Yeah. So good for them. And my hope is that Ryan Day is the next big thing for college football and that he stays with Ohio State because I think Clemson is going to fall off. I know that sounds weird, but I don't think Clemson was I think Clemson was worse this year than they were last year, and they weren't good enough to be in the championship last year. So they still might be the best team in the ACC, but I think that they are going to take a few steps back. And I think Ohio State, we'll see. I think they're going to come into the season top 5 going into next year. So we'll see.
I'm gonna disagree with you because for one, there is not a quarterback on Ohio State's roster that has any significant playing time. So unless they have someone transferring in, they're going to have a huge advantage in the experience department. Second of all, Clemson might have the best, just straightforward facilities in college football right now, and that's a huge attraction for recruits.
Yeah, I mean they're 2021. They ranked 4th. Ohio State was 2nd. So I mean they could do fine, and they do have a good quarterback. It seems, who's ready to take the reins.
Yeah.
So they might do okay, but I think they're going to take a step back, at least maybe not next year, but in the next 5 years.
I think you're hoping. That's okay, though. The real question is from this game, though, are you willing to right now admit to all of our listeners that Ohio State's defense was not better than Florida's?
This game or all season?
Right now.
They did not play. They played equal to Florida's defense against Alabama.
So, no, they're not better than Florida's.
They didn't play better than Florida's against Alabama yesterday.
So, what I'm hearing is Florida deserved to be in the championship instead of Ohio State. Can we agree on that?
No. Here's what.
Actually,
here's why I felt pretty good last night, because when Ohio State beat Clemson the way they did, they proved that they belonged. It was 2016. Ohio. It's been a while since Ohio State has got past the first round of the playoff, and you always had this feeling of people thinking, man, they probably didn't even belong to be there, especially with JT Barrett back in 2016. And just a lot of those teams where Ohio State was getting the benefit of the doubt where they shouldn't have. This year, Ohio State got the benefit of the doubt and proved that they belong the way they took down Clemson. Okay. And when they're at full speed and they I think a lot of emotion and a lot of things were going into that game against Clemson, and they just played the way that they could. So that's I'm going to look back on this season as a success. You win the Big Ten, you take down the 2 best teams. Like, there's no doubt that Ohio State's king of the Big Ten still. And then you avenge your single loss from last year. It took 1 loss for Ryan Day to be able to take down Clemson. And now the question is, how many losses is it going to take for Ohio State to avenge the Alabama thing?
Yeah.
So
that's fair. That's reasonable. So the question is, what's next for Ohio State? Justin Fields is going pro?
Justin Fields is going pro. Wyatt Davis. I mean, so we can almost guarantee that there are going to be 3 players down. One of them I'm not too upset about. The other 2 are going to be big losses. Wyatt Davis, one of the best linemen. He's going to be a first-round pick. Justin Fields, the best quarterback in college football. 2 big losses for Ohio State. And then, you have your other players, and nobody has to go this year. Not even, we have Justin Hilliard, who's a 6-year senior. He could come back next year and be a 7th-year senior. Nobody has to go. So hopefully he graduates with a doctorate. Hopefully he's not just wasting time. But, yeah, Justin Hilliard, he could come back. We're going to lose Tuff Borland, who already said that he's going to the Senior Bowl, so he's not coming back. But I think all of our defensive backs will be back next year. I think we will lose 2 or 3 linebackers. Yeah, we'll probably lose 3 linebackers. So our linebackers will be brand new. Togiai very well could go pro. Haskell Garrett could very well go pro. So we're going to be getting new defensive linemen. So our defensive backs will be the strength. Everything else, it'll be here and there. We'll see who goes. A lot is going to happen. Right now, Ryan Day said, let's just go and enjoy our families. They haven't seen their families for 3 months or anything like that. So they're just going to go enjoy family time. And I'd say next week we'll probably start hearing some players declare for the NFL draft. So,
yeah, that makes sense. And so who are they bringing to replace these guys?
Well, they have a lot of players already on out there. You got Zach Harrison, who's going to be the premier defensive end. Jonathan Cooper's gone at the other side. Tyreek Smith, he's one that could go, but he wasn't able to play. So I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back next year.
Who's going to throw the ball? That's really what people need to know. Who's going to throw the ball next year?
It looks like C.J. Stroud. There's going to be a three-way competition, but C.J. Stroud was the one who was coming in, getting some meaningful snaps against a meaningful snap against Clemson when Justin Fields went out for that one play. He was the one who came in against Northwestern for a little bit. So C.J. Stroud, but it's going to be a three-way competition. Jack Miller, C.J. Stroud, both five-star recruits. And then you have Kyle McCord, who's a four-star recruit out of Pennsylvania, who's coming in next year. So it's going to be a three-way competition, but right now it looks like C.J. Stroud is going to have a leg up on everyone else. But yeah, probably going to lose two offensive linemen as well. So it's not going to be like this year where everyone we lost was on all the big players on defense are gone. It's going to be big players on both sides of the ball. But I believe in Ohio State's development. I think we'll be just fine. I think you'll see us back in the playoffs again next year, no matter who's under center. Well, they don't really do under center, no matter who's in the shotgun.
All right, we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be a fun offseason, man. Hopefully, we'll have spring football. Hopefully we'll have just a normal offseason, and we'll be able to kick off some real football in August, September next year. Just looking forward to a more normal year of college football and just a fun offseason. Who knows? Coaches, Urban Meyer seems more and more like he's going to go to the NFL. Says that he's looking at some assistant coaches in college. I imagine they're going to be Ohio State coaches. So you just don't know. You just don't know what this offseason is going to hold. Just a lot is going to happen in the next several months. So
sure.
It's going to be fun, Buckeye fans, but we'll do just fine. But let's go ahead and switch gears and talk Florida Gators after the break.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast.
Hey everyone, it's Cameron Justice, co-host of the Orange is Orange or Browns podcast. Make sure you check us out for everything Browns. We got you covered before the game, after the game. Here are our takes, here are our feedback, here are our criticisms, and our praises. If you like the Browns, you're going to love this podcast.
I'm Dennis Maniloff, co-host along with the roadman Kenny Rhoda of the Next Man Up podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Roadman and I do a deep dive into Browns, Indians, Cavs, Ohio State, and anything else that's on the sports fans' mind.
And welcome back.
Well, on the other side of our podcast, we have our Gators.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing right now is we've already pretty much talked about who they're going to lose because they all opted out of the bowl game. So we know kind of with losing. Trey Dean did announce today he's coming back at safety next year. That's a huge keep for us because he's been kind of a hybrid player. Like he actually started at corner and then went into the nickel and then went to safety. And he seems to have found his niche at safety. Like he's not quite quick enough to turn his hips and follow the receiver at corner, but he's really good at hitting the running back and the receivers and
just seeing the field a little bit, like when he stands back. Yeah.
Yeah. So he found his niche, I think, at safety. And so this is his first full year playing at safety, and he decided to come back for his senior year. And I think that's a really good decision for him because he's not quite ready for the NFL. I think he will be an NFL player next year, but this is a really good decision, and it helped a lot because Florida was going to be young in the secondary. So this at least gives him some experience. Beyond that, obviously, the biggest question is going to be who's throwing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
We know Trask is going pro.
Yeah.
He had after an incredible season. So we have Emory Jones, we've talked about that. He's kind of the next guy up. But Anthony Richardson is going to give him a lot of competition. And not only that, but we also have a couple guys coming in who are going to make it very interesting. So Carlos Del Rio is the guy that I'm looking at coming in this next year, who he has been hyped for years. He's a big time prospect coming in. He's a number 11 overall quarterback out of high school. And I think that he is the guy who, I don't think he'll play a lot this coming season, but I look at him as potentially the guy of the future moving forward. But it's pretty much going to be Jones or Richardson who's going to be able to win out. And I think Richardson might end up being the guy. I think that poor Jones has been there for a couple years. The original Ohio State recruit who flipped to Florida, and it may end up costing him. He might end up transferring. I don't know what he is, but I look at Richardson. He's a talented guy.
Yeah, when I watch Emory, I don't see a guy who's got it. I see a guy who's been able to bank on his God-given abilities for a really long time. And I think he's probably going to be a good quarterback. I think he could play for someone like Illinois or Vanderbilt or something like that and start for those guys. But I just don't see him starting at a major Division I college football team.
Sure. And that's a fair point. Like, I don't know. I mean, I think he'll get his chance. I just don't feel super confident about his abilities.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we have DeMarcus Bowman, who was the Clemson player who transferred to Florida after his grandfather passed away. So he officially I texted you earlier this week. He officially showed up on campus this week.
Is that what that was? I didn't know who that guy was when he texted me.
Oh yeah. He was the number 1 overall running back this past year. As a freshman, he played, long story short, he went to Clemson because his grandfather lived in Atlanta and wanted him to go to Clemson. And so his grandfather passed away at the beginning of this season, and he just felt very homesick and lonely, and he never actually played for Clemson, from what I understand, but he just, much to the chagrin of Clemson's coaching staff, he decided to move back to Florida, and he only went there because of his family. And so he enrolled at Florida. He is officially there. And from what I hear, he is the combination of speed and elusiveness and power that Florida has lacked for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so if he is good as he is hyped to be, and from what I heard about Dabo's like, we are very sad to lose him because they were counting on being the next guy for them at running back. So it's a huge pickup for them. And I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah. Coaching, everyone going to be there next year? Going to lose anybody?
Well, no. I mean, they've already let go a couple guys this offseason. Yeah. Their quarterback's coach, their safeties coach. They picked up, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, a guy from Auburn to coach, I believe, their cornerbacks. And so he's supposed to be pretty good recruiting, especially, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then they're looking at Chris Ash, which I know you're familiar with him from his time at Ohio State. He was the defensive coordinator at Texas this past year, but what I'm hearing is he's going to be out, that Sarkisian's going to want to bring his own guys in, and he's going to be out of a job, and that Florida is interested in bringing him in to help coach their secondary. So a pretty big fall from head coach at
Rutgers
to position coach, but that's how it works. And what I hear is he's a really good recruiter too. So if Florida gets him, then I do believe that it'll just help really just lock in their defense. Hopefully we'll see a lot of improvements from last year to this past season to this upcoming season, and I'm just excited to see what happens.
Yeah. Off seasons, man, they're a lot of fun. We'll probably jump on and do a couple just quick hit off season episodes, I imagine, as the summer goes on and we get really bored. So look out for those. Tim, any final thoughts? So it looks like I'm heading to Florida. Maybe me and my sons will take a trip down to Florida. We'll check out a Florida Gator game. Next season, we'll probably do an episode together in Florida, just like you came up to Ohio this year and did an episode. So looking forward to that. Should be a lot of fun. Final thoughts on the season. Final thoughts on the Tim and Shipe show as we wrap things up here.
I guess the big thing is I'm just grateful that we were able to get through the season. It was a very strange year. We talked about that, and I just appreciate that we were able to do it and able to have this time, together and kind of a distraction from life, I guess. And that's been awesome. So I've appreciated that with you and their listeners. And just in general, I'm excited to see what this next season holds. I'm a little sad that the season's over because now we have this giant 9-month window of
Yeah. Now what? Yeah. But, it makes college football that much sweeter. If it went all year round, it wouldn't be as great. But to have these times of, 3 months of awesomeness and distraction is just really, really nice. So, yeah, I am glad that we were able to get into college football season, as weird and uncomfortable and frustrating as it was. College football season dragged itself across the finish line and crowned a champion.
Yeah. Well, and don't worry, listeners, I promise you, we will get pictures. We will get video of Aaron Shipe being the best Gator fan of all time because we had a deal, and it's going to be so sweet.
Yeah, I do. I have to actually get up and cheer, and I can't just sit there like a bum. But I can do it. It'll be fun.
No, not just cheer. The deal was you would be the most obnoxious Gator fan in the stadium.
Yeah, maybe the goal should be to get kicked out or
get you arrested.
Yeah, my goal whenever I go to a college football game is to get on the field. When I went to the Ohio State game, I got down on the field. Maybe I can get us on the field at the Gator game, Tim.
That'd be so good. Not to bring your sons, though. That'd be
right. Maybe I'll just leave the kids at home. Take a 16-hour drive to Florida all by myself. Or we'll see what happens.
Just fly. I'll pick you up. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So that's it. That's it for the Tim and Shipe Show Season 3. Give us a like, follow, comment on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I'm not there because I take a sabbatical during the college off season. I'm not even on Instagram, but you can reach me email. Yeah, I'll check the Tim and Shipe Show at a college football pod email this offseason if you want to give us a shout out there. But thank you so much to our listeners. Thank you so much to our sponsors, the Press Play Podcast Network, everyone who is involved in making this podcast a reality. We just love you all so much. Thank you, and we'll catch you next time.
And go Gators.